All right, welcome in, hockey fans. Another episode of the Pro Hockey West Report. Scott Strandy with you tonight from a very hot Phoenix, Arizona, where we topped off about 112. Stephen Marsh up in the upper right-hand corner in Las Vegas, Nevada, where it's probably, 50, 60 degrees, something like that. And Nick Maxson joining us from Apple Valley, Minnesota, where I'm sure it's only, 20, 30 degrees. How are things,
Celsius,
guys?
yes.
Yeah.
Doing pretty well, Scott. We were talking pre-show. For those who know, Minnesota State Fair is happening, the Great Minnesota Get Together, and maybe enjoyed some of those flash floods. Maybe I shouldn't say enjoyed. It's nothing enjoyable about a flash flood, especially at the State Fair. But Steven, I know down in your neck of the woods, some casinos were, having to deal with some of these, and yeah, the big crowds at the State Fair had to endure up to their knees level of some water here just a couple of nights ago during one of the bigger festivals that happen here in the great state of Minnesota.
Yeah, yeah, and the floods were pretty big there in Minnesota. You were talking about maybe some tornado warnings that you had there in Minnesota too, which I don't know. That doesn't sound like it's a very common occurrence.
Not very common. It's not impossible up here in the Great North State, but it's very late in the season for those kinds of things. But nonetheless, still gave us a little bit of pause. Especially with their, the state fair. The daily attendances are well over 100,000 people, sometimes topping out over 200,000. So when you have some weather that shall I say, develops quickly, and you got that a big of a crowd in a very centralized area, it can cause some issues. So I'm glad nothing really came about it. Yeah, there was some rain, there was some lightning, but it was quick in, quick out, and luckily nobody was hurt.
And it's rare to get them in the Southwest and Nevada, Utah area, and there was a few last week too. We had a couple touchdown around Nevada, around the 15, also more in towards Utah, parts of Arizona. All had to deal with a few little small tornadoes. So that's not some wicked weather for sure.
Without a doubt. I will tell you that flash floods were the issue around here before I got here, but you can still see standing water in the desert, which is unusual. Anyway, we're off the weather beat. Let's move on to talking about hockey coaches. I thought tonight, guys, I had a chance to sit down with Steve Potvin, the new old coach, if you will, of the Tucson Roadrunners, and he'll be our little feature tonight. So I thought, why not dig in and tell people about the coaching staffs around our coverage area? So, Nick, you got 3 places. Steven, you got 3. I've got 2. We'll kind of dig into it and just give a little highlight about who's coaching where and if they've been there a while or just came back or something like that. So, sound like a game plan?
Game plan for sure. And speaking of game plan, right, Scott? We'll start with the Ontario Reign, and I guess maybe we should tell the audience too, Scott, why this matters. In profession, especially in hockey, and why we're having some time to discuss this. I think it's important to know that every coach has a unique style. They have a different way that they want to play the game. Some coaches are very good at connecting with players. Those are your players, coaches. Others are maybe your John Tortorella-esque types, where it's, this is the way that you're going to do things. I don't really care about being nice to you or maybe knowing you off the ice, but, it's more of a strict professional thing. So a little bit of insight into the teams that they'll be facing and who's leading the charge here. So with Ontario, it's Marco Stern, who is at the head coaching position. This is his first time of being a head coach. He was an assistant coach with the Los Angeles Kings for the last 4 seasons, 18 to 22. First playoff berth as an assistant that the Ontario Reign did. Also helped them to a 99-point regular season back just a little bit ago, 44, 27, and 11 record. But I think where Marco Sturm is really going to be valuable, Scott, and for those who follow the Ontario Reign, is he was one heck of a hockey player himself in his career. A veteran of 938 NHL games, 487 points to his name, 242 goals, a career plus 59 rating, 14 seasons in the National Hockey League. And what I'm going to pose to you, gentlemen, is, when you have a player that spent that much time in the league. Now, granted, he's been out of the league for a little bit, but, he bounced around a little bit. Boston Bruins, the Kings himself, again, former player, the Florida Panthers, the Sharks, Vancouver, and Washington themselves. How valuable is it to the team that he's coaching to know that a veteran that's spent nearly a decade and a half at the highest level of hockey is the one that is going to be at the helm and helping to not only coach but develop these young players to help them get a chance to make it to the big show?
Well, I'll start off because I know Steven's got some stories from Henderson and Vegas that I'll let him tie into what I say. But I think it's extremely important. And I had that conversation with Steve Potvin. It's about relating to the players. And, Steve told me something that I thought was really unique. He said the players at the AHL, the NHL, and the ECHL level are very close in talent, right? He said the big thing is the mental state. How do they handle the mental state? And he said some guys will come into the league with all kinds of talent and they will just continue to do what they did in college or what they did in juniors because that was successful for them, right? So they'll do that. So it's a coach's job to be able to tell them, hey, I know it worked for you then, but I think at this level, we need to tweak some things. We need to do some things differently. So that's where a guy that's played in the league has their ear, if you will, that he can bring out and say, okay, let's try this. I know it worked for you, but it's not working here, so let's do this. And I'll lead into Steven on that one because a lot of teams now are streamlining it. Steve said that too with their organization. They want their ECHL, their AHL, and their NHL to all run on the same page, same train tracks, if you will. So wherever that train goes, they know that it's just a matter of a few practices and they're going to fit right in at whatever level they're at. Steven, you saw that in Henderson and Vegas this year, right?
Yeah, I certainly saw that. And of course, it will be a new system this year with the new coaching staff at the top there with Bruce Cassidy and his crew leading the charge for the NHL club. And of course, the AHL club coaching staff is the same. And of course, they have a new ECHL affiliate and a new team there. So it's going to be a whole new set of guys there. So it will be, and we saw a little bit of development camp. They were all here. They all kind of got a chance to work on that and have meetings with Bruce Cassidy and them, also be able to work with the guys on the ice and figure out what kind of system they want to do so it can be more streamlined when a guy from the ECHL goes to the AHL, joins Henderson, or goes from the AHL to the NHL and joins the Golden Knights or wherever. So I think it's important for that because, like you said, the familiar with what you're going to be expected to do when you make these jumps to these other levels. And especially when you go from the AHL to the NHL, you already are familiar with how they're going to roll things. Again, the systems are going to change now because you have a new coaching staff at the top. So you're going to have that, and then everybody kind of trickles down and will learn some things from Bruce Cassidy and his staff, and then from Coach Viveros and his staff, and then Rick Bennett and his staff down there in Savannah. So it's I think that's how a good organization can run cohesively like that. It's good. Other organizations are doing similar. I mentioned last week we talked about the ECHL and everything, and I think it's different now than it was before because more teams seem to have a set organizational chart between the ECHL, the AHL, and the NHL. Certainly that wasn't the case 10 years ago. It was kind of a little bit more all over the place with regards to where their ECHL team was. Maybe two teams were going to an NHL team, or one, or nobody had an affiliation. So it's a lot different now, and I think there's a reason for that. And certainly it's helped with the emergence of the American Hockey League out west, and then now, with about the ECHL growing, I think having about 30 some teams as well. As of course the NHL has like 32 teams, the AHL about as many. So it all be able to be more streamlined.
Definitely agree there, Stephen. And just to round up the Ontario coaching staff, you have Chris Hodge as the assistant coach. He's back for his sixth season as an assistant coach. He's got 10 years of total coaching experience. Had a cup of coffee in the NHL as a player, 582 professional games as a player across multiple different leagues, the ECHL, over there in Europe, though, a couple of different leagues as well. So he's a big return. And then Matt Millar, also the goaltending development coach there with Ontario. Now in his third season after joining from the Dubuque Fighting Saints, played a little bit of Division III goaltending himself. So again, some familiarity within the coaching staff here with Ontario. But again, Marco Sturm, the big one, making the jump from the assistant position now to the head coaching position. And Scott, as you, as well as I know, Marco Sturm also played a lot internationally there for Germany as well, whether it's World Juniors or Olympics. And, to kind of round out the point, and then we'll move over to Steven to recap the Henderson coaching staff is I also think that international, that big game experience is also really important when you make the discussion about the mental playing field and how I think teams more and more are really starting to look at that aspect of the athlete a little bit more in depth now. I think, before it was the IQ, it was the body, and now just the mental part of the game, right? Not letting the highs get too high, the lows get too low. How do you handle that adversity? Or when maybe your instinct is, I got to be a little bit extra aggressive here to learn to stay back and just to stay under structure if you're being hemmed in defensively. I think all of that plays into a part of a player's success as well as a team success. So Marco Sturm definitely will be at the forefront. I do expect some big things out of Los Angeles, who've got quite the roster going into this season. Again, building off a very successful campaign this past season as well.
Yep, totally agree with you. I will add to that these coaches are becoming more and more counselors as well, because so many players come in, not only the talent, but they come in with advisors and agents and all these guys that are in their ear all the time, and maybe past coaches that they really believed in. So they need to groom them. And the final thing I'll say on that is these coaches in the AHL, and Steve will tell you that when you hear our feature, that it's about developing, but you also got to win, because if you don't win, you might not be around long. So, all right, Steven, tell us about Henderson.
Well, Henderson is going into their third season. It's, we're talking about a lot of changes of the coaches of the other teams in this division, but Henderson is kind of, I guess, becoming the veteran coaching staff of the AHL.
The veteran, they've only been around 3 years.
3 years, but I mean, there's been so many changes with the other teams. I guess Colorado's another one that's been around a little bit. But of course, head coach Manny Viveiros, he's the main guy. He's the head coach for the Silver Knights. He's been with them, of course, since the beginning. This will be his third season. Of course, he spent a lot of time in the Western Hockey League with Spokane Chiefs, and then of course before that, he did spend some time as an assistant coach with the Edmonton Oilers during the 18-19 season. Also was with Swift Current Broncos of the WHL as well from 2016 to 2018. Has 14 years of coaching experience in North America as well as some internationally. Ranked fourth overall in the WHL. Of course, the big thing with Manny Viveiros, we'll get to the assistants in a second, was last season it was a up and down for him, because personally with his health issues, with battle with prostate cancer. So he was not able to coach at times last season. He was in and out of behind the bench, and of course there was a very the season in general for Silver Knights was very up and down because of the injuries they had. Plus, Coach Viveiros couldn't be behind the bench, so the assistant coaches, which I'll mention in just a second, really had to step up and do what they could, and they did. They really stepped up, and I think that's good. You have a coaching staff like that can really step up and do that when your head coach is not able to do that. He's not able to go. Sounds like everything is well with head coach Viveiros, which we'll probably ask him when camp starts up again how he's doing health-wise, but he seems to be strong. He was in development camp and involved with that, so everything seems to be on the right track. He did get back in that last playoff game the Silver Knights had in Colorado against the Eagles, so that was nice to see that. And so it sounds like everything should be a go for him to be behind the bench. So I think that's the best news there. His assistant coach is Jamie Heward, who also spent some time with Coach Viveiros in the Western Hockey League as well. So the familiarity between those two guys, being able to work together at the AHL level when you've worked previously at another level, I think helps with that. And so he was with him on that staff. Of course, he's also spent some time in Regina, playing over there. Also played with drafted by Pittsburgh in 1989 NHL draft, so he's has some NHL experience. And then you got Joel Ward, who came from playing, retired in 2020, and came right into coaching and got a job with the Silver Knights, and is behind the bench there with so I think that's kind of nice when you have a guy that just came off playing, still pretty young, and then is able to come in and be part of the staff. I think because a lot of these players, especially at the AHL level, are still pretty young. And so you have a guy that maybe can connect a little bit more with that young. But of course, Joel Ward played 11 seasons. There's the Nashville before he was with the Capitals, the Sharks. Of course, he played his career 726 games with Minnesota, Nashville, Washington, San Jose. So he's got quite the experience at the top level as well. So again, a veteran crew, I guess you could speak, as they go into their third season here, the Henderson Silver Knights. But again, the big story I think is Coach Beaveros and is cancer battle looks really good, and so that's going to be important for them to be able to be behind the bench and to coach the Silver Knights this upcoming season.
Steven, just a quick follow-up, because you mentioned Joel Ward fresh off of an NHL playing career himself. And again, you bounced around a little bit, including up here in Minnesota for a couple of seasons. But, granted, yeah, you're fresh off of the ice, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are coach material, right? Some players just don't have that ability to connect. So as far as a player, and I know, Scott, we've mentioned this too in episodes in the past, it seems like the role players, not the superstars, just have that ability to connect and an ability to just sort of see the game from that press box perspective. Steven, do you get that sense that Joel Ward, granted, coming into a staff like Henderson, he wouldn't be there unless it's earned. But, is there that potential too, where Joel Ward, fresh off of that, he probably has not only that best, most recent experience for the players, but he's got to be able to relay his message. Is that not the biggest thing that most coaches have to learn early on in their coaching career?
Yeah, I think certainly that would be a positive, or it would be certainly a thing that you would have to do. I think he does that. I mean, when we do get to talk with him and we got to hear more from the assistant coaches this past season with as I said, with Coach Beavers not being with the team for a while last year. So they were the ones doing the post-game press conferences and everything, and you got to hear from them, and both are well spoken. And Joel Ward, again, I think he's somebody that has, I think, just the knowledge that you can bring to the AHL level is good, and I think he has that. I think as he's learning too, just as the whole staff has been learning the last few years of how to win at this level, and how you can navigate through what you navigate through in an American Hockey League season, in addition to just trying to win on the ice, is who you're going to have playing each night, and that can be a challenge in its own right. And I think they've done a pretty good job of that. I think Joel Ward is good at what he does, and I think he'll just continue to get better at that.
Well, you mentioned it, Steven, right off the get-go. You said they may have the oldest coaching staff of all of them, and I think consistency is the name of the game. With the Vegas Golden Knights, now they're on their third coach in 6 years, 5 years, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But the AHL franchise has stuck with their guns, if you will, for the 3 years now. And I think that's a big thing in the development of players, is if your coaching staff stays together. And that's the thing with Steve Potvin, too. I keep going back to it because it's a big part of the feature. But he was around, and you talk to some of the players that have left and moved on from Tucson and Arizona, and they'll all go back and say that Steve Potvin had a big role in their development, because he was one of those guys that could keep them on an even keel. And guys that come down from the NHL and they'd be frustrated that they were coming back down to the AHL. They thought they'd pass that level, and then he'd give them words of advice and encouragement about how to stay on track. And, he stayed on track himself with the coaching experience that he had. So, yeah, good stuff. I will jump to Colorado. You guys are up for that?
Sure.
All right. Greg Cronin, the head coach with the Colorado Eagles. Greg's been around a long time, mostly as an NHL assistant, worked on Long Island with the Islanders. And the stability point that I brought up to you, Stephen, was extremely important, I think, for Greg, because he came in, got himself a stable opportunity, took some players that were kind of going different directions, a lot of high caliber talent, and kind of reined them in and got them to play as a team. And you saw last year they had a good tournament, or a good playoff run. Tournament. I'm an NCAA hockey guy, sorry.
It was like it's a tournament in a way, a playoff run tournament. Yeah,
they had a really good playoff run last year, and a lot of it's got to do with Coach Cronin and his staff. His staff is unique in the fact that the stability in the staff kind of changes from time to time. I'll tell you that assistant Aaron, I'm going to try to get this right, Schneekloff is his new assistant. Aaron comes over after leading the Eagles to back-to-back Kelly Cups. So he's an ECHL guy that helps foster what I think is a really good program at Loveland. You got to have a guy that bonds. That's been the common theme, right? We're talking about these guys that are coming in and bonding together. So look for Aaron to be a big role player this year in their program. They also have a great goaltending coach, and when you talk about goaltending in the Colorado ranks, that's what it's been for a long time, right? They talk about what they're going to do to make sure that their goaltenders are all on the same page, because that's been it, right, guys? For the Avalanche, especially over the last 5 years, guys have moved up and down, and Peter Budaj is the man in charge of the goaltenders, and very, very good at what he does. He works with all of them in the system, and that's why when you need a goalie at the NHL level, you can reach down to your AHL franchise, bring them up. Tim Branham, another assistant coach who plays a big role in what they do, and let's not forget, in the AHL, you're not just an assistant coach, but you do a lot of other things as well, because the staffs are not nearly like they are in the NHL. So Colorado, again, one of those staffs that is playing the system role, right? They play the role of preparing guys for the NHL, but as soon as they send somebody to the NHL, guess where they go? Right over to Salt Lake City to grab a couple ECHL players to fill that role. So that bond that we're talking about and that blend of playing the same style, staying on the same railroad tracks is extremely important. So Colorado in good shape. Maybe not as consistent as as the Henderson Silver Knights. It sounds crazy to say, but anyway, they're there, all led by Greg Cronin, and they continue to do a fantastic job in Loveland, Colorado. All right, Nick, back to you.
All right, Scott, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to have you introduce your feature with Steve Potvin.
Let's do it.
So we'll be back here in just a few moments.
The NCHC, where the best in college hockey compete, and the numbers back it up. In the past 8 years, 6 teams in national title games that are run of 4 consecutive national championships, 2 Hobey Baker winners, and 46 All-Americans. More than 70 alumni in the NHL with multiple Stanley Cup champions. A leader and innovator in the sport, including a one-of-its-kind pod. One conference, creating champions and improving the game. This is the NCHC.
Really, JR? You think you can still do this?
I'm focused.
You're way too old to hit that target from there.
I've been listening to everything you said. It's been running through my head, locked and loaded.
All right, still got it. Still got it.
Who's old now?
More than 140 live games from the nation's best college hockey conference. Ready for you wherever you are, however you want to watch. Your favorite team is on NCHC.TV. On your phone, tablet, or stream to your TV. Subscribe now to watch the best in college hockey at NCHC.TV. If it's NCHC hockey, it's on NCHC.TV.
All right, welcome back in, hockey fans. Pro Hockey West Report. Scott Strandy with you from a very hot Phoenix, Arizona. Stephen Marsh in the upper right-hand corner in Las Vegas, Nevada. Nick Maxon with us from Apple Valley, Minnesota, where they're finally drying out just a little bit after some serious rain during the Great Minnesota Get-Together. All right, guys. I did have a chance to visit in Phoenix. Part of the trip here was to visit with Steve Potvin. He was gracious enough to take us out to dinner, or lunch, I should say. So we had a nice meal at the Breakfast Kitchen Bar. Shout out to them for some really good food. And when we had a chance to visit with him, I asked him a number of questions, as you'll see in the upcoming feature. So without further ado, let's go visit with Steve Potvin, the head coach of the Tucson Roadrunners.
All right, welcome in, hockey fans. Another Pro Hockey West report here in the desert, back home, I guess. 30 years worth of time here, so this is home. Next to me is the new head coach. New head coach, old head coach. How about head coach, old coach, new coach, whatever he is. He's the guy with the Tucson Roadrunners, Steve Potvin, joining me. What do I say, man? How are you?
I'm doing great. I honestly, this is the best intro. Hopefully it's the last time, right? We don't have to go through the old coach, new coach routine, but yeah, I'm looking forward to being the new coach, and hopefully we can stick with that.
Okay, so
for a few years. Anyway.
Yeah, I told you, I admire what you do. I've had you on the show. I think you do a fantastic job. Players that have come across time with you have told me the same thing. They love playing for you. They love the way you teach them. I thought you told me one of the best things. I asked you how difficult it was when the old job ended, and you said, hey, I believe the term was, I would be a hypocrite if I didn't stand up and do my thing, because I tell players to do this, and now it's my turn to do this and show by example. Is that fair?
Yeah, that is fair. I think, you know, when Bill, you know, basically told me Jay would be coming back and I'd have to step back into my assistant coach's role, you know, he mentioned that, listen, this is probably going to help you at some point. You're going to be a better coach because of it. And he was right. And to what you were saying, I mean, you know, there's so many times where circumstances can really derail a player, as you know, and a lot of times their own thoughts can get in their way, and it could be a lot of times protecting their ego because they're proud of what they do and they're proud of, you know, the work that they put out there. And, you know, we're always behind them saying, hey, listen, can't let circumstances derail you. You have to stay on the mission. And honestly, sometimes it's best to put the ambition of the club first. You know, sometimes when you do that, it's amazing how much you get rewarded. And honestly, it's almost like I wrote the script, but I'm just so thankful that, you know, they gave me the opportunity again to be a head coach, and it just worked out. And honestly, I'm very, very thankful and beyond elated to have this opportunity again.
Well, the bottom line of this is there's not many of these positions that come around. So when you get one, career-wise, you want to take it, right? Unless there's really some extenuating circumstances.
Well, correct. You know, when you're given the news, you have a choice to make, whether you're going to, you know, you can have a tough attitude about it and look the other way, and maybe, you know, you're not in the game anymore. You know, and so I made the choice that I like what I do, and I want to stay in the game, and I want to be a part of the club, and I believed in the message moving forward, and I just made the choice that I'm going to stay with it, and I'm going to go. And honestly, yeah, when you get an opportunity to be a head coach or an assistant coach, there aren't that many positions available. And honestly, the competition is fierce in this game for players and coaches. And honestly, I look forward to the opportunity to coach again, and I'm so thankful to have the opportunity again.
Okay, so let's talk about this team that you're going to inherit again, kind of, as the head coach anyway. You told me off camera it's a little different. You got some more veterans this year maybe than you've had in the past, and we know the Coyotes organization is a rebranding or redeveloping, if you will. How's that mix going to be, and how competitive can you be with what you're seeing on paper?
Well, you know, when you look at the NHL and you look at teams that won the Stanley Cups and the teams that have success, it takes them a lot of time. It takes them 7, 8, 9 years. And I don't think that has to be true for the American Hockey League.
Right.
In one season, you can make a lot of good little changes that can make a significant impact. And what I'm looking forward to is that impact. I think we can make an impact right away and really start to build and continue to grow our culture. And I think with that growth, when we're ready to bring in these new guys, the culture's already in place. The players that are here now are going to be a big part of the future coming through, and so they get to understand what we're looking for. And then I think in a couple of years it'll be a great combination when there's already a source of leadership here, some guys that have understood the culture, and then when we bring in some new prospects, they'll already be a little bit ahead of the game based on the culture that we've already kind of grown and established. So honestly, I'm looking forward to working with the new leadership group, the players that were here in the past that remain on the team that had a leadership part of their game. I'm looking forward to seeing their growth so that they're ready to really pass it on and then take their game to another level.
Yeah, I hear you. You and I have talked about this in the past about the AHL, especially in the West, the way it's become more of a bus league now. You can get places here and there real easy.
Right.
The competition has gotten incredibly tough in the Pacific Division. We lost Stockton to go a little farther north up to Calgary, but other than that, when you look at the games you're going to be playing in Henderson and Ontario and San Diego and Bakersfield, even San Jose, it's not torturous. As a coach, do you like that?
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. I think I think anybody that's in the game, they love the challenges. You know, and I think that's when growth is met, when you're encountered with so many good challenges. When you're playing great teams, that's when you see the growth. And we want our players to play against the best so that they're ready to play in the NHL.
Yeah.
And so we're so happy and thankful that the market here, there is such parity, and the teams that are involved, they're all financially stable and they all have really good cultures already in place. And so it's competitive. And honestly, we're not going to be shy about it. We want to get better, and we want to continue the growth.
We were talking about the transition about NCAA players making the move into AHL and NHL. You know, I traveled around a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now, to see how close that level was, and I thought it was really close. What are your thoughts now? Are there guys that make the jump from NCAA hockey and can fit right into your level?
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, God bless you. You told me about that trip, and honestly, I wouldn't really wish that on too many people. What you did was unbelievable, and honestly, God bless you. That was great. But I do think that there's players that can step right in 100%. We went through it last year at the end of our season. You know, we were looking at players to see if, you know, there were a couple good players that, you know, we can snag and make sure that, you know, we strengthen our team. And there are 2 players that ended up with Vegas. So, you know, I think they can step in and contribute. We just didn't have the room for them, but yeah, 100%. And you know, the training that they get and the ice time that they get is phenomenal in college hockey. The practice time is, I think, such a benefit for these guys. So I think they can definitely go right from college right to the pro game for sure.
The tie-ins between all 3 are so important, and you're in the middle now, right? So you get the guys from up above and you get the guys from down below, and you have your own group. How important to you as a coach, because you not only want to develop, but you want to win?
100%. 100%. So it's really important, you know, that I have a good relationship with Jeff Pyle, and he understands the concepts we're going through, and so that when we do call up players from the East Coast League, that they have a real good chance at being successful right away if they already know our lingo, if they already know our structure. And you know, we're not going to hold Atlanta to playing exactly like our structure, but they should have a basic understanding of it. And it's real important from the American League to the NHL that our prospects know exactly what's going on in the NHL, and they understand Andre Tournier's language, and so when they get there, they haven't heard it for the first time. It's something that they're very familiar with, and then they can just really put their best foot forward.
And I put your ECHL team in Alabama. They're in Georgia, in Atlanta.
They're in Atlanta, exactly. Yeah, no worries. It's
anyway,
good. We got to stay on our toes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this then about the transition from AHL to NHL, because you've seen it. I told you I talked to many players that you worked with, and it's such a mind game at this point. There's so much talent, but what is it? Is there something you can put your finger on where maybe a guy with all this talent all of a sudden says, "This is it, I'm ready"?
Well, I don't know if it's one thing, but I know that the players, whether they played in junior or in college hockey, they had a certain way of having success and they had a certain way of playing, and that's what they remember. So they try to implement that here at the pro level, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it's just getting them to buy into the fact that it's not. Because, you know, it's a hard thing. In their minds, this is what they've done in the past and they've had success with, and that's what they lean on. And we got to try to create some new habits, but we got to get them to buy into it.
Right.
And so that's where for the longest time, I always heard coaches say that it's a partnership, and I really didn't understand what they were saying, but I think that's when the partnership is really formed.
That's a good point.
Really making them understand, and we have to do the best that we can to understand their game as well, and not really hold it against them.
Yep.
We're there alongside them to try to actually take that next step, and so I think that's the biggest thing, is just making sure that they understand where they were isn't necessarily going to get them to where they're going to want to be.
Right. That's a good point. Okay, let's wrap it up on this one. When we talk about your particular organization, we know the struggles that you talked about it off camera a little bit, about maybe 3 years of building this and trying to get through this whole process. But you're upbeat. You're always upbeat. Is it hard to keep everybody upbeat when you're going through a transition like you are, and getting everybody to buy in? You got a lot of young guys, so that helps. But let's be honest. Some of those guys are coming from 10,000 seat buildings and now having to play in the NHL at a lower seating capacity. Does it make a difference?
You know what? Maybe it does, but I think if you have the foresight to understand the possibilities and the opportunity is here, I think it's actually really encouraging sometimes.
Sure.
When you look at the possibilities and what this is going to look like in a few years, I mean, I really want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And I'm, that's going to be our message to the players. Like, have the foresight to look ahead. And right now you're at the ground floor, and you're going to get the opportunity to really grow and build. And honestly, that to me brings a lot of enthusiasm behind my steps. I mean, I can't wait for this. And whatever negativity there is about our team, I mean, honestly, I can't wait to see what it looks like in 3-4 years. And you know what, that's maybe a little bit short-sighted for us as well. Like, who knows? We might have a lot of success. Look, I don't know if we should really, just expect the worst, but like there might be some surprises along the way.
Yeah, I agree.
So
okay, so the final one, because I just thought of one more that I had to ask you. Your thoughts on Arizona State hockey, because you've been here when it didn't exist, right? And all of a sudden it exists. Now it grows up. Now it has this building, and they're able to give the Coyotes a spot to play in a tough situation. But talk about what you know about Greg Powers and what he's done with this program. And of course, you've got Josh Doan there now, the captain of this squad. What's that been like, being an Arizona resident as long as you have?
Yeah, it's amazing. We just talked about the foresight, and to be honest with you, I was a doubter.
I was too.
Yeah, I think there are so many of us, and I'm so happy for Greg, and the way he's built this program, and how he goes about recruiting, and it's largely due to him and his staff, and it's great to see, and I'm beyond excited for him, and honestly, he's so deserving of this, and he's put in a lot of hard work and some time, and he's being paid back for it. And honestly, I don't think he did it for any other reason than what the moment required, really. I don't think he was looking at it from any other standpoint. And, I think that's a good message for a lot of people in the game, just have, the organization's ambition in mind, and, a lot of times you get rewarded.
All right, so we had a chance to visit with Steve. I hope you all enjoyed it. A little bit longer than normal because Steve and I can talk, in case people don't know. We've been friends for a little while now and had an opportunity to sit down and chat. So many things to talk about. A lot of the takeaways that you heard from Steve were the fact that he's back in a familiar position. He knows there's only 32 of these jobs, and he's going to do it. And we know the Coyote situation. He's not naive. He knows where they're at. He knows that they're in a 3-year window. He told me a 3-year window, as you heard, that they have to get things together in 3 years, or who knows where they're going to be. But when the opportunity to coach comes along and you're a coach, you do it.
100%. And I love the fact too, Scott, that, when you take a step back and when you realize that, as a head coach in the American Hockey League, you're one of 32 that get the privilege to have that as a title, regardless of the situation that's around you. Right. And, very eloquently said, that's out of his hands. His job is to coach a hockey team, to develop players, to help them reach their dream of being the best that they can be, whether that's here in the American League or, hopefully for most kids, to make a crack at the National Hockey League. It's something you don't take lightly. And with Steve and his discussion with you, definitely humbled and honored to have, that opportunity. And that's one thing what struck me about your discussion with him.
I want to have one comment, just kind of as a recap of it. He told me two things that I thought were really important and maybe just life lessons for a lot of people. Is he said that he would really be a hypocrite if for what happened to him when they asked him to step down from the interim head coaching job back down to the assistant coach. He said, I'd be a hypocrite if I told my players to not worry about things, and yet I worried about them, or I threw a tantrum, if you will, or I left because it didn't go my way. So I thought that was really good advice. The other thing he said was, I was a little worried that if I walked away from this over sour grapes, that I might be out of the game. I might not get another opportunity. So kudos to him for hanging in there. He's going to be a great coach. He was a great coach in a very difficult time during the pandemic. Steven and I ran into him a few times, and he held that team together during some really difficult times. And let's not kid ourselves. I was at Mullet Arena today, or by Mullet Arena, and the Coyotes are going to play there, and it's not going to be ideal by any stretch of the imagination. And you know what? It trickles down to the AHL too, and Steve's doing a great job, and just happy to visit with him. Happy to hear that he's doing well. All right, Nick, back to you.
Thank you, Scott. Let's stay towards say southeast California, shall we say, right? So let's talk about a new head coach for this year for the Gulls. That is Roy Sommer, right? So he's not new to the head coaching gig at all. Now, mind you, this guy, to give you some street cred, as they call it here, Scott, this gentleman is the American Hockey League's all-time leader in wins at 808, games coach at just over 1,742, and not one, not two, but the last 26 seasons as a coach in the San Jose Sharks organization. So let's just say that he's been around a little bit, right? He, as a player, also spent some time, let's just say, in the IHL, for those who remember those good old days. Actually won a Turner Cup in the IHL back in 85-86, won also a Calder Cup with 84 with the Maine Mariners when they were still around. Also represented the Team USA as a player in the World Junior Championship in 76-77. So let's just say that, he's been around a little bit. And more importantly, Scott, when you talk about consistency, when you talk about how the game, and I think this is where it gets a little bit different, I truly believe as a head coach, is to be a head coach, one, takes a lot of learning, and whether it's the game itself, also how to connect and relay your message without it getting stale. But two, as the game evolves, you as a coach have to evolve too. And I think that says a lot about Roy, that, being around, in the game for almost 30 years as a coach, you're doing something right. But I think more importantly, that means that you're evolving with the game and that you're staying relevant to where the game is trending. Scott, I kind of want to get your comment on that. Am I on the right track there? I mean, if you're going to be around a game for that long and the game changes, that means you as a coach have to change with it as well, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just take a look at it anywhere along the line of any coaching staff. If you can't relate to your players, and boy, things have changed. I mean, from playing video games to doing everything that the young players do now, it's extremely important that you evolve, because if you don't, you're just going to get tuned out, right? I thought, and here's kind of a neat story I can tie into that. I had a chance to visit with John Van Beesbrook at the NJEC, and I was asking him about recruiting goaltenders for Team USA and the World Juniors and things like that. And he said, I said, you played at every level, and you were very good at every level internationally, playing with the NHL, the AHL, all of the different levels. I said, what did the guys come and ask you for advice? He said, it's kind of funny because I'm 20 years out from playing now, and guys will come up to me. He said he had one young goaltender come up to him and go like, hey, you used to play in the NHL, right? It's like, yeah. He said, yeah, I did. So, I mean, there's one of the things where you have to stay relevant, you have to stay current, and that's in this case, it's exactly the same. You can be around for a long time, have great ideas, but if you can't relay those ideas to the players, what good are you?
And to Stevens, Henderson, I know we keep going back to the Silver Knights, to the AHL coaching staff, although the personnel is the same, they're going to have to evolve this year too, because Bruce Cassidy will likely have a different system that he'll want to execute. So Steven, in terms of, you could say, a quick change, right? How important is it going to be for the Henderson coaching staff to pick up and really be able to teach Bruce Cassidy's systems quickly to their squad, so that way, again, say Vegas runs into another injury bug or 10, that they can pluck them up from the American Hockey League and try to be as impactful as they can in the National Hockey League?
Oh, sure. That will be important. I have faith that they'll be able to do that. I think that, like I said, being able to get together for development camp was good. They're going to have the rookie camps in September. That'll be a good opportunity. They're the main training camp. They'll work together between the AHL and the NHL coaches will all participate in that training camp, at least the start of it. So they'll be really familiar with it then. I think it's also good too, from the Henderson perspective, from an organizational perspective, that you do have some guys that have been that are in the system already, that knows a lot of these players in the AHL level, especially some of the top AHL guys that are going to be maybe getting some AHL or some NHL time this year, like a Paul Cotter or Jonas Rami or those guys, because they've been with the organization for at least 2 years. They've been in Henderson, if not, well, certainly some of them longer than that, but certainly under Coach Viveros' and company's tenure the last 2 years. So he can have input there. I think it's also going to be exciting for those players too, that they do have a new guy at the top, that they'll be able to get some fresh eyes on some other players that maybe Bruce Cassidy and company will like. Obviously, the general manager will still have some input, but they leave a lot of it, sounds like, up to the coaches too, of what they want, and I think that's good. So I think that can be good, but I think having coaching staff in there that's been around the last couple of years, it's good for that, for the developmental of these players, because they'll already be familiar with them and be able to help out Bruce Cassidy as he gets familiar with everybody.
And speaking of, developing players, a couple of names that Roy's been tied to developing. How about this? Joe Pavelski, Logan Couture, Tomas Hertl, Timo Meyer, Dan Boyle, Mika Kiprasov. Yes, for those who remember, he was a San Jose draft pick. Evgeny Nabokov and Jonathan Chichu. Yes, I think more known for his hairstyle than maybe his game on the ice. So a pretty good stalwart there to have behind the bench. And for those who think, okay, well, 26 seasons, Nick, I mean, is he really that good? Well, guess what? AHL Coach of the Year in 2016, 2017. So that's pretty recent. Yep. So how about that? So really good, guy to lead the bench there. And then a couple of assistants, again, a brand new coaching staff for the entire roster here. Jason Clark joins as an assistant. He split time between a couple of teams in the QMJHL. For those who are unfamiliar, that is a Canadian junior league, mostly in Quebec. He had a bit of a cup of coffee in terms of his playing career, and also a little bit of coaching the CJHL. So he joins as an assistant, as well as Chris Spar, as well as an assistant coach, also with his first season. Has spent time with the Flint Firebirds of the Ontario Hockey League. So just, you could say, a cousin, right, Scott, of the QMJHL up there underneath a big umbrella of the Canadian junior hockey system. Spent some time overseas with some coaching. At the end of the day, it played 9 professional seasons as a player. 75 points in his playing career, 187 playing minutes, mostly in the DEL, which is a German professional league. Also 65 games in the ECHL with the Idaho Steelheads. So, again, it's interesting too, because when you have this new coaching staff too, Scott, I think with Roy at the helm and these assistants, although younger, maybe not the most experienced, it's going to be a good mix, because you have some of that youth, but also that big stalwart thing, and with Roy that's leading the helm. So in San Diego too, with I would say probably a lot to look forward to this season, especially with their talent pool. This is a good move to kind of get a little bit of a fresh look in their coaches staff and see if they can maximize that talent that they have coming in. So going to be exciting for Gulls fans to see what this coaching staff can do with quite the talent they have coming in for this season.
Well, two things I want to say about. Can I? I want to say 2 quick things about Coach Sommer. I think it's going to be a nice change of scenery for him after all that time between Worcester and San Jose. That's a long time in the organization that's coaching an AHL team. I think he's kind of one of the last in that breed that you're going to see be with a team at that level, coaching at the top there at the AHL level for that long, whether it be, Worcester before, now Barracuda, since they've come out this way. You're not going to see that anymore. There's not that many of those guys around. There's so much moving around. Even at the NHL level, you see it. But the AHL level, there's so much moving around, whether players go up or whether coaches go to other teams or they go get promoted to the NHL level. It's so not common to see that anymore. And so he may be the last one you see that. You rattled off those all the 26 years, the 800 some wins, all those 1600. I just don't know who you're gonna see. At least a lot of them with one organization. There might be some other guys that have been around in the AHL for a while, but to spend all that time in one organization, I don't know when you're going to see that again.
I don't know.
Good point. Yeah, and I was leading to that same point. We see players recycle within the division and within the AHL. I mean, we watched Dylan Sakura go from Henderson to Colorado and move around like that, and there's a number of players like that. It's unique about the coaching, and I asked Steve that as well about the quality of play, right? And you get a guy from the San Jose organization, you bring him to San Diego. How much does that help him plan against San Jose, plan against other teams he plays? So, I mean, they're kind of, they're recycling each other a little bit, and it's not a bad thing. I think it creates maybe some stability and some, like Steve was convinced that this was going to be the most competitive Pacific Division of the AHL maybe ever.
Well, we like that. We like that. We like that. That'll really help us with our coverage of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Steven, what do you got up next?
Well, we're getting low on time, so let me just quickly go to we'll go to San Jose. Well, that's a good time to transition to San Jose because we were talking about Sommer. We talked about the guy that's taking over there, and he's a pretty young guy in his regard. John McCarthy, who is going to be only the second head coach, of course, in the organization's history. He made his coaching debut with the Barracuda as an assistant during the Stockton Heat after announcing his retirement from pro hockey earlier that day. It was on December 10th. And that's because he suffered an ischemic stroke due to a previously undetected hole in his heart. And so after swift medical attention from the team's medical staff and the physicians at the Kaiser Permanente Hospital, he was stabilized and made a complete recovery. But, of course, that shifted probably from playing to coaching, and so he ended up going behind the bench. But he's a Shark guy through and through, was drafted by the Sharks in the 7th round of the 2016 NHL draft, holds all Barracuda franchise records, including games played, 275, 62 goals, 76 assists, 138 points, 5 shorthanded goals, was the Barracuda's team captain from 2016 to 2020, and also was the team captain for Worcester back in 2012 and 2013. So he's a Sharks guy through and through, and I think that's going to be exciting. He's played with some other teams too, played with Chicago too, but they were part of the Sharks organization too. So he's also has 88 NHL games with the Sharks between 2009 2016. So he's appeared in 640 regular season games with San Jose's NHL and AHL franchises. So I mean, and of course he also spent some time in Boston University, won a national championship there. So he's a guy. If you want a guy that's going to lead your second coach ever in your franchise's history, pretty young franchise still, to take over a legendary guy like Roy Sommer. This guy, John McCarthy, seems to be the guy. I mean, he's going to know the Sharks' way and how they run things, and it's going to be exciting for him to be able to kind of go from playing with the Sharks at the NHL level, all the time he spent with the Barracuda, and now he's going to be leading them. That's a story in its own right. You don't see that too often these days, and so that's exciting. But you might see it more going forward as a lot of these guys that are playing now will get coaching opportunities. But he's going to be a great story, and it's going to be exciting to see what he does. I'll mention the assistant coaches real quick. Louis Mass, he's going to be one of the assistant coaches, has 12 years of coaching experience between the ECHL, the NCAA, and the WHL. And then Kyle Hagel will be another assistant coach that they have. He's been with the WHL, but has also spent time with the ECHL and the AHL. He's been from places like Rockford, Peoria, Hamilton, Portland, Charlotte, ECHL. He was with the Fresno Falcons, the Reading Royals, right here in Vegas. I remember him from the Las Vegas Wranglers. Oh, he's a guy that's been everywhere. It's like that song, I've Been Everywhere, man. Seems like he's been everywhere, at least at various levels. And so he will be the assistant coach there. So you've got, again, McCarthy leading things, and then you got Louis Mass and Kyle Hagel assisting him in San Jose this upcoming season.
All right, good stuff. San Jose, one of those franchises, as you said, that relatively young, the Barracuda, but now they got a brand new building and they're hosting the rookie tournament.
Yep.
Everything seems to be lining up for them. Let's hope that Coach McCarthy gets things done and gets them on the right path.
I'm really excited for them because I think it's going to be really. I mean, last year was not a good season for them, but they've got a fresh change with everything, the building, this new coaching staff, bringing this guy in who's been with the organization. It's going to be real exciting to see this team this upcoming season in this division.
Okay, well, let's keep moving. Let's go back to those Tucson Roadrunners, which as unstable as things are in Phoenix with the Arizona Coyotes, things are relatively stable in Tucson. Steve has been with the organization 6 years. We mentioned that he came in, was the interim coach during COVID, then was asked to step back as they brought Jay Faraday back from the big club back to Tucson. Then Jay leaves, and then they promote Steve again. So it's a case of perseverance. He hung with it. He's been with the Coyotes since like 2016, 2017. So he's been around doing skills coaching, things like that. He told me this year that he's thinking this might be the most veteran team they've had. So it's kind of an oxymoron, right? Arizona Coyotes, Tucson Roadrunners, and they're being the veteran team because we look at the Coyotes, they're all young guys. But like he said, we've drafted a bunch of players. It's just that none of them are old enough to play in the AHL. So they had to go out and get some players that could play in the AHL to fill a roster, for lack of a better term. So no doubt in my mind, Steve Potvin will do a really good job with that group down in Tucson. He's got a great assistant coach. John Slaney's been around with the Coyotes organization for a little while, worked as an NHL assistant coach. Really seems to enjoy the role he has with the Roadrunners. And I know I get to see him a few times because his daughter and Craig Powers, the ASU coach's daughter, played a lot together growing up. So Greg would talk a lot about John Slaney and just the character that John is. And then Steve told me that he went and got another young guy, and he said, pardon the pun, but Zach Stortini, who fought his way, and literally a big-time fighter. Nick's nodding his head. He knows. So he kind of fought his way into coaching as well. So he brings a different level, right? He brings a toughness, a role player mentality, and that's something that the Tucson Roadrunners are definitely going to want to take advantage of because there'll be a lot of role players, especially this year. Those older guys I told you about that'll be there to help. They're basically, and I don't want to have any disrespect towards them, but they're placeholders. Let's be honest. When these guys are old enough that are being drafted now come in, they're going to need a place to play, and those guys will probably be bumped out. But look for Tucson to be more competitive, a lot more competitive than in the past, and that staff headed by Steve Potvin will do a really good job. Nick, back to you.
Speaking of a staff that will do a really good job this year, down in the Valley, down there, Scott, and mind you, they're swinging big there with the Seattle Kraken. Yes, we're talking about Coachella Valley. Only 2 coaches right now listed. I imagine there's going to be 1, if not 2 more that'll be added. The big one, though, is head coach Dan Bilesma. For those who follow the game of hockey, shouldn't know too much of an introduction, but in case you're wondering who he is, he led the Pittsburgh Penguins of the NHL to a 2009 Stanley Cup championship. Was also the NHL's Jack Adams Coach of the Year in 2011. 49-25 and 8 in that season that he was awarded the Jack Adams Award. And mind you, this was also during a time where he lost 350 man games to injury. And that was both Crosby, Mulkin for the last 35 games of that season. So it says a little bit about what kind of coaching he can do. Granted, he had a cup of coffee with the Buffalo Sabres. It wasn't the greatest tenure, but also I think it's also safe to say that Buffalo's also gone with some upper management changes that may have something to do with that as well. So Dan Bylsma down there to develop the Seattle Kraken's younger prospects who I think have an underrated prospect pool, even though they're only in their second year. He's going to be tasked to try to get them up to speed as fast as he possibly can. And to assist him with that, this is big. We touched on this a little bit earlier. This is Jessica Campbell, the first full-time woman to hold a full-time assistant coach position in the American Hockey League. For those who were like, okay, well, guys, what does this person, what's this person's repertoire? What's their rap sheet, right? So let's talk about how good Jessica Campbell is, right? So was with the Tri-City Storm in the USHL. That happens to be the best junior league essentially in the USA, right? Also was heading the Windy City Storm girls hockey program based out of Chicago, while also serving as an assistant coach for the Nuremberg Ice Tigers in the DEL. So again, going back to the German league. So that's a lot of hats at one time that you're coaching, right? Also as a player, because I think the common theme here is you have to play the game well to be able to coach the game well, right? Represented Canada at 2 under 18 World Junior Championships, was the captain in the 2010 year. Also was named tournament MVP of that year. Also played 5 games for Canada at the 2015 Women's Hockey World Championships. So let's just say this. Played also professionally for the Calgary Inferno of the Canadian Women's Hockey League. Also winning the Clarkson Cup in 2016. Also skated for Clarkson University from 2010 to 2014. Also serving as a captain in her senior season. So she's got street cred, Scott. And I think for those who are wondering, why they picked her up, I think her resume is pretty self-explanatory. This is one heck of a coach. And I think, again, there was a great feature that they did on her when she was first hired. I think she's got a lot of insight. I think she is a very intelligent coach. And I think the way that she's going to communicate with these younger players is something that she's going to have quite a big impact on that organization as they try to, again, to ascend their ranks from being the last expansion team as of right now to try to be a force to be reckoned with in a Pacific Division that, dare I say, has a little bit of wide openness to it, maybe except for a couple of teams. There's some opportunities there.
A lot of them. I'll tell you right now 2 things. A, my hand is sore from writing all that down. And I just say there's
going to be a quiz later. There's going to be a quiz later on all that.
I just ended up with 2 notebooks completely full. So yeah, talk about street cred. That's street cred. Also, congratulations to Seattle organization for doing that. Thinking out of the box, if you will. Not surprised that would be the case, especially in a place like Coachella Valley. It's new. It's exciting. It's Southern California. It's if there's a place to do it, that's the place to do it. Either that be a Canadian, but you're not going to probably be able to get away with that. And I use that in air quotes. If you're going to go to Toronto or Laval or any of those places, because they're still too traditional. But Seattle's opening it up. You talk about Dan Bylsma and the opportunity that he has. If I were a guy like Dave Hackstall up in Seattle, I would try to win quickly because there's a pretty good guy down there ready to take your spot if you don't get the Kraken to where they need to be.
100%. And, I think it's important to mention this too. The assistants is Seattle too, that also could do. How about Dave Lowry? Spent some time with Winnipeg Jay Leach as well as Paul McFarland too. So I don't know if he's number 1 on the list. That maybe just because, he's been in the NHL. He has won a Stanley Cup. It's easy to put his name there. I'm not so sure that he would be, the first successor yet, Scott. I do think that maybe he would be elevated at some point. But I think there's a couple of other quality assistants up there to say Dave Hackstall and, maybe stumbles out of the gate here in Seattle. I know that they're pouring a lot of resources into this club, which I'm glad to see. But if they want to remain competitive and they start struggling, I wonder if maybe some of those coaches already up in Seattle would take the reins first over Dan if that opportunity were to arise.
Yeah, good point. But he's being a great leader in Coachella Valley for sure.
100%.
Well, we're going to quickly go to Bakersfield, and This is an example of a guy that moved up to promotion. And we had the guy, Jay Woodcroft, getting promoted to Edmonton, is now the guy there. And so Colin Chalk, who was the interim guy, is now going to be the full-time guy. He was announced as the head coach on June 27, 2022. He's going to be the ninth overall in the 25 seasons of Bakersfield hockey that they've had. So yeah, it's going to be exciting for him. This is going to be his first head coaching appointment in the AHL. He's previously served as the head coach in the ECHL for 4 seasons with Brampton and was an assistant with Belleville in the AHL, Kalamazoo, ECHL as well. Played professionally for 15 seasons, was with Fort Wayne for a decade, where his number 91 is retired. So he's got a lot of experience there and with Fort Wayne and the ECHL level and some experience. But this will be his first AHL head coaching gig. Said got a little taste of that last season when he took over in the interim basis from Woodcroft when he went to Edmonton. But now he did well enough. They're going to give him the chance to be the full-time guy going forward. His assistants, we'll mention those real quick. Keith McCambridge, who's going to have a decade of American Hockey League coaching experience from him. With head coach of Hartford from 2017 to 2019, was also with the Winnipeg Jets' top AHL team in St. John, Manitoba. He also played 11 seasons in the AHL, IHL, and the ECHL, and finished his career with the Alaska Aces and went behind the head coach of the Alaska Aces when they were to the Kelly Cup Finals in 2009, back in the days. And I know the Alaska fans miss their Alaska Aces, but that's a topic for another day. But yeah, so he's got some good experience there. And then real quickly, the other guy is Josh Green. He comes from Winnipeg Ice of the WHL, and he's from Alberta. He's also known for help the development of 2022 9th overall pick Matthew Savoy, 11th overall pick Connor Geeky, and 3rd round pick Mickey Millen. So he's helped those guys as well. So that's going to look at Bakersfield staff upcoming.
Certainly
Good
will.
stuff.
Yeah, really good stuff. Real quick, guys, we got about maybe 90 seconds or so here left in today's show. But, we talk about head coaches today. We talked about assistant coaches. There's one other particular coach, and actually, before I forget the goaltending coaches, but we forget 60 seconds quick, the role of the video coach. These are guys that are often dual roles in the American Hockey League. Scott, real quick to you, 30 seconds. How important is the video coaching position at this level? And, what can they do to help, develop not only the player, but also show the team in certain situations, how can they translate a view from the broadcast to the view on the ice? How difficult of a job is that?
It's a very difficult job, and there's talent out there like you wouldn't believe. They're going to help at every level. They help in the reviews. They help in the skills, especially with goaltenders. If there's something out of touch, they're going to fix it. So, yeah, we'll get into goaltenders and video goal coaches and video coaches, I should say, down the road.
Well, they get to watch. I think a lot of times they get to watch the game from up above. They usually have a computer and they're always flipping things, always as the broadcast goes on, and then other videos and stuff too. But they're also watching from above a lot of times, and they get to see things from above that you don't get to see when you're a coach down and you're coaching right at ice level. So I think that's always a plus too.
And it's an art form, as Scott would say, to be able to translate that view that's horizontal into a view from the player perspective, which is looking the other way. So I think there's a lot of skill in that as well.
Well, on the NHL level, they rely a lot on the video coaches for reviews and stuff like that. If there's offsides and stuff like that, I'm sure there's some of that in the American Hockey League level, probably not as much so, but I'm sure there's some. They're always called upon in those situations too. Certainly at the NHL level, and I'm sure it happens at the AHL level too. So they're valuable in that regard too.
Absolutely, guys. Another great show. Great stuff. Like I said, we've got a lot to talk about in the future. So we'll let everybody go and enjoy the rest of the week and prepare themselves. It's preview time. We're almost there, guys. Have a good night.